Hey Ship, what are you drawing today?
How do you know it's daytime?
From my internal clock. Don't get sarcastic.
Sorry, it's just difficult being stuck down here.
I know. Trust me, it's better if you stay here. So, what is it?
I'm drawing a picture of Spider-Man.
Oh, you've been watching movies from hundreds of years ago. A more positive time, that's good.
Yeah, specifically I'm drawing the moment when his Uncle Ben dies.
Oh,
Peter Parker didn't really need Uncle Ben anyway.
that is quite a statement.
The idea that the youth are irresponsible has been around since Adam and Eve had their first children. Dude, move, you're in the way.
Oops, sorry.
Adam and Eve, having spent their young adulthood lazing around in the Garden of Eden with everything provided for them, lost it all because it still wasn't enough for their ambition. They were now aging and, compared to the limitless abundance they'd been accustomed to, found themselves having to work for scarce resources and criticized their children for lazing around expecting everything to be provided for them. Sam Raimi's series of Spider-Man films from the beginning of the 21st century brought an expression to the popular collective consciousness. With great power comes great responsibility. A variation of this phrase was repeated in subsequent Spider-Man films, as it was a powerful, inciting moment in which Peter Parker learns a lesson that will define his actions and character. However, if Peter Parker hadn't spent so much time reading about nanotechnology, electron microscopes and cycloids, and instead maybe paid attention to general history, he'd have realized that Uncle Ben's wise words were hardly anything new at all. He might have even learnt his lesson about responsibility much, much earlier. He wouldn't have ignored his teacher to stay behind to photograph Mary Jane, so he wouldn't have gotten bitten by that genetically modified spider, meaning he wouldn't have become Spider-Man. Because of this, he would have held down a job because he wouldn't have been late all the time from fighting crime. His propensity for photographing toxic, venomous predators means he wouldn't have got a job at the Bugle.
Welcome to the Daily Bugle.
Could have had a successful career working with Tyra Banks.
Smile.
Eddie Brock would have worked at the Bugle instead.
Do it. It's Brock, sir. Edward Brock Jr.
And with no one to call him out on his habits of lying and deception, otherwise known as standard journalistic practice, he wouldn't have been fired and wouldn't have become Venom. Peter would have gone to see MJ's first play, they would have gotten together earlier, MJ wouldn't have broken that astronaut's heart, leaving him stranded and humiliated at the altar, and she wouldn't have had her own heart broken because Peter wouldn't have kissed Gwen Stacy. Aunt May wouldn't have had to move out of her home, nor would she have been attacked by the Green Goblin or Dr. Octopus, and she'd still have her umbrella. The Green Goblin would probably still have been around, but Harry wouldn't have attended the fusion reactor demonstration, and his father, the Green Goblin, would have been there instead.
This is a breakthrough beyond your dreams.
With no Spider-Man to save anyone, Norman probably would have died there, bringing an end to the Green Goblin. Seeing the death of Norman might have even convinced Otto Octavius to shut down the machine before his inhibited chip was broken and his wife was killed. The people and government of New York City would have saved thousands of dollars, perhaps millions, on insurance claims, repairs, and rebuilding the monorail. And most importantly, Uncle Ben wouldn't have driven Peter to the library that day, and he would still be alive.
Are you okay? You know this is a languages channel, right?
Yeah, sorry. I got carried away.
That's okay. Hey, say Peter Parker again.
What? Why? Peter Parker.
Peter Parker!
Okay, first of all, let's take a look at what it means to be responsible. From a morphological perspective, the word is built from the re prefix, meaning back, from the Latin verb spondere, meaning promise, and the suffix ability, sharing the same root as able. It's one's ability to answer a pledge. In this respect, Peter Parker's sense of duty to immediately take action when his spider sense alerts him to danger, well, it fits pretty much exactly into the etymological legacy of responsibility. The lesson of balancing power and responsibility has appeared historically in both French and Spanish. The French term noblesse oblige has been used since about the 1800s to say that those in positions of nobility are obliged to support those less fortunate than themselves, or responsible for keeping them in line.
I treat my subjects, servants, children, a wife, with a firm but gentle hand. Noblesse oblige.
This idea of handling power responsibly comes up again and again in politics, notably in the establishing of democracies and new nations. An early version of the statement arose as early as 1793 during the French Revolution, in a decree made by the Convention Nationale. Ils doivent envisager qu'une grande responsabilité est la suite inséparable d'un grand pouvoir. They, referring to the representatives of the people, must consider that great responsibility follows inseparably from great power, probably as a strong admonishment of King Louis XVI's excessive overspending and corruption, as the rich got richer and the poor got more taxes. A short 26 years later, over the other side of the world, at the Congress of Angostura, Simón Bolívar gave an address advocating the balance of power and responsible governance in the new states. Que las buenas costumbres y no la fuerza son las columnas de las leyes. That proper morals and not force are the basis of law. To be fair, we can't really expect Peter Parker, or anyone really, to be interested in the French, but we do know that Peter Parker studies Spanish, at least in one universe. The fact that Spider-Man Homecoming didn't take advantage of his Spanish classes to use the Congress of Angostura to establish this defining lesson of the importance of good morals, well, it's just lazy writing, to be honest.
Que las buenas costumbres y no la fuerza son las columnas de las leyes.
Muy bueno, Señor Parker.
Surely Peter Parker would be familiar with Winston Churchill. In 1906, Churchill addressed the treatment and rights of native races in South Africa. He argued against the British Empire's policies that exploited and oppressed these communities. Where there is great power, there is great responsibility. Where there is less power, there is less responsibility. And where there is no power, there can, I think, be no responsibility. He later cut that down to the much more catchy and memorable, "The price of greatness is responsibility." But that's still very far away from Peter. Perhaps there's a source closer to home. In 1945, US President Harry S. Truman uttered a similar sentiment with "the buck stops here," making a turn of the phrase "pass the buck," itself meaning to defer responsibility onto someone else. Pass the buck came from poker players in the mid-1800s, in which they would pass some sort of marker around the poker table, perhaps a piece of buckshot or a knife with a buckhorn handle, to signal whose turn it was. If a player didn't want to deal, he could pass the responsibility onto another player by giving them the buck. Harry S. Truman kept his turn of phrase printed on a sign on his desk since 1945, so with any level of education in the American school system, I'm sure he should have come across the idea before. As for the story, well, it's best if we have Mr. Truman explain himself.
Well, nobody else could make the decision but me, because I was the president, and the final decision comes to the president, you know. I used to have a sign on my desk that said, "The buck stops here." The buck stops at the president's desk when he's president of the United States, and he either makes the decisions or he lets them go by default, and you can't afford to do that when you're president.
Harry, that's the sweetest thing.
Thanks, Harry. Peter must have read some Shakespeare as part of the school syllabus. "Heavy is the head that wears the crown" is a very well-known phrase, somewhat misquoted from the original line in Henry IV, Part 2. The king declares, "Uneasy lies the head that wears a crown," expressing his inability to sleep because of the weight of his decisions and their impact on the upcoming war. But understandably, Shakespeare is not the most accessible literature to a hormonal teenager whose crush is dating the guy that beats him up. So, how about one final proverb? "To whom much is given, much will be required." This quote was first spoken by the real Marvel OG, the big one who tops it all, the most powerful superhero of the MCU, Jesus. In Luke 12, Jesus speaks of watchfulness, about being ready when you have been entrusted with responsibility. According to the parable, when given watch of the house at the master's leave, servants remain vigilant for duty at all times in case the master returns. From everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded, and from the one who has been entrusted with much, much more will be asked. The thing is, though, unlike Spider-Man, Jesus probably didn't exist. Ultimately, there are a lot of bad guys in Spider-Man's world, all of whom are substantially more powerful than he is, perhaps in wealth, influence, or even sheer strength. Spider-Man only manages to defeat them using his smarts, instincts, and by having allies who stand up for his integrity. But none of his enemies, with all their extra power, hold up any duty of responsibility. For that reason, probably a more apt expression to summarize the series was written by John Dalberg Acton in 1887. Power tends to corrupt, and performance enhancers, uninhibited AI, symbiotic alien viruses, and sand corrupts absolutely. I guess Peter just has to learn the lesson himself through his own experiences. It's often the way. Every teacher knows that they can try to impart wisdom to students by showing them important lessons, but it's only when students are on the very cusp of complete failure and about to pay thousands to retake a course that they make every attempt to absolve responsibility and find a way to blame the teacher. In the end, Peter Parker didn't find someone else to blame for his uncle's death. He looked at the consequences of his own actions, so he's already doing much better in terms of responsibility than most of his peers. I'd love to be Spider-Man. Can you imagine climbing walls and swinging between skyscrapers?
Not really. I have one arm and no legs.
True, you've only got one eye too. Spiders generally have 8.
I've actually got 4 eyes. Those 3 on top are cameras too, you know.
Huh. Why do you need those?
The triangular design assists in both horizontal and vertical depth perception.
You never move up and down, though.
But I can.
Really?
Yeah, watch this.
You're moving like 2 inches.
Alright, Spider-Man, you move up and down without touching the ground.
No, it's good. I just don't see why you need the extra 3 cameras.
It's depth perception and vertical movement, damn it. You can only dream of seeing what I'm seeing.